Okay, now we want to do something. We want to draw some pictures, and those pictures are complex. You're thinking that you have to draw this stuff. We're going to draw something called the circular flow, the great circle of life. That's why Simba is up here. Okay? Mufasa taught him about the great circle of life. So, how does GDP get calculated? What does it mean to the whole economy? Let's start out, and we did a circular flow before in a prior chapter, and this is a much more complexical version. Okay? What goes on? You're a household. Let's go up to the top here. You're a household. You have a job, and you work for a business. Okay? So the you up at the top is you being a consumer. Down at the bottom is the business you work for. Two things are happening here. And actually all businesses are down at the bottom, but it includes the business you work for. So you're working for a company. They're paying you. They're creating what we call factor payments, which are wages, interest, rents, and profits. Okay? There's factor payments. So these factor payments are going from the firms to the household. So your labor, when you're being labor, you're getting paid. If you own some capital and people are using your capital businesses, you're getting paid. If you're a farmer and you're growing wheat, you're getting paid. So these payments go to the factors of production. If you own a business, you're getting profits, and those profits are coming up. So these factor payments are leaving the firms, going to the households. What do the households do? Well, the households buy stuff. We buy groceries. We buy cars. We pay our electrical bills. We spend all this money. Spending all that money is called consumption. So the things that we buy, and this is personal consumption, the things that we buy from businesses, that's our consumption. The money we get from businesses are the factor payments. So what happens? Why is this called a flow, and why is it a circle? Okay, so what's happening here? What's happening here? Household buys stuff. The businesses take the money you got from the households and they pay the workers. The workers take that money and buy stuff. The businesses take that money and, yeah, you see it? It's a circle. It's a flow. Consumption creates income, and consumption creates and consumption creates. All right? If we stop buying, now the business has no money. It can't pay the households. Now the households have less money, so they're going to buy. Okay? We're all connected in the great circle of life. So households spend money on consumption. They get paid. Blah, blah. Now, let's add part 2 of this. You don't spend all the money that you get. Some of the money you get, you save. Saving is just defined as income that you didn't consume. Your savings goes into the financial system. So some of your money you spend, some of your money you save. That money goes to a bank or a credit union or a stockbroker or something. It goes into what we call the financial system. The businesses borrow it. Now there's households borrow from the financial system too, so they can do stuff. But to simplify this, the savings goes into the financial system, comes out of the financial system by businesses that go borrow it. Okay? So households are connected to businesses not only through their consumption, but also through their savings. Millions of people put a little bit of money in banks. The banks take that money, consolidate it, and loan it to businesses to build factories or buy airplanes or okay? That's what the financial system does. That's its function, is to take a little bit of money from a lot of people, combine it, and then make loans back to either households or firms. That borrowing is mostly going to turn into investment. It's going to turn into the businesses building new factories, buying new equipment, capital, creating a capital stock. Savings is tied to investment, a very importante lesson that in economic theories, savings are always tied to investment. Got it? So we have this financial system, savings tied into investment through the financial system. Okay? Exciting. It's exciting, yes. Okay. Both households and businesses pay money into the government in the form of taxes. So again, what households do with their money is getting more complex here. They go to businesses and they buy stuff. They save. They also pay their taxes, we hope, or they go to jail. So the businesses are paying taxes and the households are paying taxes. Everybody is paying taxes into the government. Okay? But beyond that, money is coming out. So your taxes go into the government, the business taxes go into the government. Some of the money the government collects comes out to the households as payments. So retirement, Social Security, various government, disability programs and income support programs, all these kinds of programs where the government is paying the households for things. That money flows back to the households. Okay? At the same time, the government is buying stuff from businesses. So the government buys paper clips and buys toner for their printers and buys airplanes and buys medical care and medical supplies, right? The government's buying all this stuff. So taxes go into the government from both the businesses and the firms, and then money comes out of the government both to households and to businesses. Okay, got it? It's exciting. Yes, this is getting, way complexical. The important thing is that this money is flowing around and around and around. All right? We save, businesses get that money, they do something with it. We pay our taxes, the government gets that money, it goes somewhere. We spend our money, factor payments. So all of this money doesn't sit there. It's not like it goes from one place to another and stops. It goes from here to here to here to here to here, and it keeps moving. It keeps flowing. Flowing. And then there's one more part of this, which is exports and imports. So we have the rest of the world out there. The consumption line is domestic consumption. That's consumption of things that are made or sold in the United States. We also buy stuff from other countries. We buy imports. Just go to Walmart, and 90% of the stuff there is made somewhere else. So the households are buying stuff. The money is flowing out of the households to the rest of the world. That money is potentially lost, right? Money is leaving the United States through those imports. And it doesn't automatically have to come back. But some people out in the rest of the world are buying things from the United States, what are exports for us. So somebody gets on a plane, comes to Vegas, takes a vacation. Okay? They're bringing money into the United States. So some money is going out, some money is coming in, and we keep on flowing. Might not flow as well as we would like to there, but money going out of the country to the rest of the world and money coming into the country from the rest of the world. All right? So complex, nasty looking, but the trick to this all, this circular flow, is the flow word. That money is going from the households to the businesses, to the government, to the households, to the financial system, to the firm, to the government, it keeps moving through the system. Okay? All the money that we spend keeps moving through the system. And we spend it, and then the business spends it, and then the government, and it keeps moving through the system. The great circle of life. All right? The economy is not a static thing. It's a dynamic thing where resources are flowing from point to point, business entity to household entity to financial. Okay? That's the key to this. That's what we all need to understand, is this flow, right? The antelope eats the grass. The lion eats the antelope. The lion dies, fertilizes the grass. The grass grows. The antelope eats the grass. The lion eats the antelope. And the great circle of life keeps going until the hyenas come in. They eat too many of the antelopes. The lions starve. The grass doesn't grow, right? Simba's got to come in, kill his uncle, get rid of the hyenas, and then the Pride Land goes back to being good. Okay? That's the story of economic activity in the world. All right. So, how big are the parts of GDP in the United States? Well, this is for 2019 because as I speak on this, it's 2020 and we don't know what GDP for 2020 is, and it's going to be depressing. So total GDP in 2019 was $21,427 billion, and that's 100%. Okay? Consumption, the green line here, the consumption, this part, that part is $14,563 billion. That's 68%. So a little more than 2/3 of all economic activity. Come back here. That one green line labeled consumption, that's 2/3 of this whole thing, roughly speaking. Okay? Investment, which is called gross private domestic investment, GDPI, but investment, $3,744 billion. That's 17.5%. Okay? So this part over here, this borrowing from the financial system, that's 17.5% of what goes on in the economy. And government purchases, $3,753 billion, which is also 17.5%. Those things are as close to equal as you would ever get. So the government part, this whole government part in the middle here, is 17.5%. And that's sort of a lie because GDP is about production, right? So when you pay your Social Security taxes in, and then the government uses those taxes to send somebody else a Social Security check, that's not going to show up in GDP, right? GDP is what was produced. Yes? And we'll talk about this more at the end of this section. But GDP is what is produced in our country. So if all we do is take income, we use taxes to take income away from working people and give it to retired people, there's no production involved. When those retired people go out and spend that money buying retired people stuff, then that money becomes part of GDP because there's consumption. But just this little flow that's going on here, people paying their tax payment, that's not part of GDP because it's not production. So Social Security is not part of GDP, which means the government is actually bigger than 17.5%. Okay? The government's actually about 1/3 of the economy. But some of what the government does actually shows up in consumption and even technically in investment. Okay? Now, one of the interesting things here is these two things are being roughly equal. Usually when the economy is good, investment is higher than government. And when times are bad, government is higher than investment. So the fact that they're about the same tells you that maybe there's something fundamentally funky going on in the economy, that what we would normally expect during a boom time, which is for investment to be bigger than government, didn't happen or hasn't happened in the last few years. The opposite's happened. Okay? And then if you add these three things up, if you add up 68, 17.5, and 17.5, you actually get 103%. So what's up with that? Well, we exported $2.5 trillion. We imported $3.1 trillion. That means our net exports, the difference between exports and imports, was a minus $632 billion. A minus. So $632 billion more left the United States than came into the United States. That's a minus 3%. And so 68 plus 17.5 plus 17.5 minus 3 gives us the 100. So the fact that this is a negative, the fact that we're trading more, and that's the topic 2 chapters from now, the fact that this is a negative means that it's actually taking and making our GDP smaller. Okay? Fun?